everyone, and welcome back to session 5 of the Revolution Mindset program, where today we are going to be looking at setting healthy boundaries. If you're tuned in, please say hi, let me know you're here. And if you have any questions, please do drop them in the comments box. Adele, thank you so much for being here. She's saying hello to everybody. I appreciate you taking your time out every week to join us in these sessions. And as we always do, I want to kickstart by hearing your wins for this week. What have you achieved in not just this week? Let's go back to the past month. We are in the last day of January, the last day of the first month of 2023. What have been our wins and our achievements over these 31 days so we can share and celebrate them here today together before we go into setting healthy boundaries? Let me know your wins and achievements. We have a couple of moments just to let these comments come through. So what have you achieved in the past 31 days? We are 1 month down. We've got 11 months left in 2023. How are we feeling about our goals? How are we feeling about the progress that we're making on what we've set so far? Are we keeping up that consistency? Are we exercising our strategies? Do we have our vision clear on where we want to take ourselves this year? Let me know your wins and achievements for January over these 31 days. And if you've attended every week, which some of you have, which has been absolutely fantastic, that is an achievement in itself. We are here for session 5 of the Revolution Mindset program. So just whilst I'm waiting for you guys to share your wins and achievements, I'm just going to cover what we're going to be looking at in today's session. So first of all, we're going to be looking at the importance of setting boundaries. We talk a lot about we need to set boundaries. We talk a lot about managing and preserving our energy with others, but we need to first start by looking at why we need to do that. What is the importance of setting boundaries with others for today? And also we're going to look at why we struggle. So why is it difficult for us to set boundaries with other people? And then we're going to finally finish off by looking at the 3 C's to setting boundaries. And I've got some final points to note on what we need to consider when we set boundaries with other individuals. So just waiting for your achievements. If you're tuned in, what have you achieved this past month? I know every week we've had some great wins. Can you consolidate them together and share what you have won, or sorry, what your wins have been and what your achievements have been for January? And if we just recap on last week's session, the key point from last week was we looked at the difference between planning and strategy. And then we went into our breakout rooms. We went through 20 questions to start to transform our plan into a strategy. And the key concept was that a plan without a strategy will only lead us in circles. We'll get stuck in those patterns. We'll find ourselves faced with lots of obstacles if we aren't strategic in the plan that we have for our goals and our visions. So any achievements? Everyone's been a bit shy. Jane, it's great to see you. Thank you so much for tuning in. Let us know what your achievement has been. What has your win been for this past month? Adele is saying that I made progress on my course. I'm more focused. I'm working towards my vision and goals. I'm showing up for myself. I finished reading a book. That is a lot of amazing achievements for this past week. Let's celebrate that with a little bit of confetti like we do every week. Well done. You know, it's important that we remind ourselves of what we're achieving, the progress that we're making, to keep that momentum going, to keep us that consistency, to keep us moving forward. So if anybody else is tuning in, you want to share your wins, you want to celebrate today, just drop it in the comments box. So I want to open up with this quote. So you've probably heard this a lot. If you have, I just want you to take a step back and reflect on this. So it was Jim Rohn that says, we are the average of the 5 people we spend most of our time with. We are the average of the 5 people we spend most of our time with. Now that question can provoke, that quote can provoke a lot of questions. It can get us starting to think about, who are the 5 people we're spending most of our time with? Are they inspiring us? Are they bringing us down? Do they drain our energy? Are they giving us energy? Who are the 5 people we spend most of our time with? And who are the 5 people we'd like to spend most of our time with? How are we giving ourselves to other people? Who are we giving our time and energy to? Are we surrounded by people who support us? Are we surrounded by people who bring us down? So we're the average of the 5 people we spend most of our time with. And with that in mind, I want to jump straight into this week's challenge. And this week's challenge is to go on your social media, whether it's Instagram, whether it's Facebook, whether it's YouTube, whatever social media you fancy, but remove 10 people from your social media. Consider the people you don't even know. Consider the people that post things on your feed that you don't agree with, you don't connect with, you have no relation with. We always build this. We're always on a news feed every day. At some point, we need to make sure that it's filled with positivity. So we need to make sure that we're surrounded by people that inspire us. We're surrounded by people that lift us up and that are there to support us. So the challenge for this week is just to go on your social media and follow 10 people on Instagram, remove 10 friends from Facebook, people that you don't connect with, people whose posts that you see that you don't connect with, and start to refill it with some people that inspire you. So that's this week's challenge for anybody who's tuned in. Adele's saying here that I'm starting to plan much better. I got an electronic tool to track and plan. That's absolutely wonderful. Thank you so much for sharing that. Lots of wins, Adele. I really, really appreciate this. So for me, I incorporate where and what I spend time on. That's absolutely fantastic. So lots of wins. That's really wonderful. Okay, so that is the week's challenge. We'll open up with the week's challenge. So why should we set boundaries? I'm going to open this to you guys who are tuned in. Why is it important for us to set boundaries? What are your thoughts? Before I share a few things I've captured, what are your thoughts? So Adele's saying, I removed more than 30 people on Facebook the past week and left groups. And that's another important thing as well. It's not just about removing people, but ensure you're in the right groups, in the right communities within social media, so your newsfeed is positive and uplifting. So go and check out what Facebook groups you're in. I did the same exercise at Dell last December, and I remember when I went through the list, I was in groups that I can't even remember signing up to years ago, and I removed myself from a lot of them to keep the energy in the newsfeed that comes through my phone positive and uplifting. And it might be just that people annoy you. You might just see some people just post what they have for breakfast, what they have for lunch, and it's not really uplifting. You've never met that person before. They just added you as a friend. Why do we need to keep them in our social media feed? Jane is saying to protect our space. I love that. That is so important. It is important to protect our space. So we need to set boundaries to protect our space, both mentally and physically. So whilst we're waiting for a few more, I just want to put mine on here. So one is to preserve our time and energy. So just going on to what Coach Jane was saying there, not just about protecting our space, but by protecting our space, we also preserve our time and our energy. And we only have so much time and energy that we can give to other people. And there's this thought, kind of a metaphysical concept or perspective, that every human or every person that we interact with, there's either going to be energy taken away, we're going to gain energy, or the interaction is going to be neutral. And think about this. Think about people who you have an interaction with where you come away from the conversation and you feel absolutely drained. They've taken that energy away from you. Think about the people who you have a conversation with, and when you walk away, you feel uplifted, inspired. It was a great conversation, and they've given you energy. And think about those people you have a conversation with where that energy transfer is being quite neutral. It's been a natural conversation, and you come away neither more inspired, no drained. It was just a natural conversation. So setting boundaries with the people that drain our energy helps us preserve our time and energy. We only have so much time. Time is limited, and there's only so much energy that we can give each day. The second point is to stop living by other people's conditions. If we don't set our boundaries, we don't have self-respect to set our boundaries, people will create those boundaries for us, and we'll start living by other people's conditions. So the second point there is to stop living by other people's conditions. The third is to increase our positivity. If we give too much time, too much energy to negative people, we are going to become negative ourselves. It's going to rub off on us. So we need to set boundaries, limit the time and energy we spend around negative people, and increase the amount of time we spend around positive and inspiring people. And that's all about boundary setting as well. And then finally, if it gets too much, it can also affect our well-being. So if we are living by other people's conditions, we're giving too much of our time and energy, and it's being wasted, and we are starting to feel that negativity, it can affect our overall well-being. So we must set boundaries to take care of our well-being. Now I want to come back and see some really good wisdom coming through from you guys on here. So Adele is saying there are people that only take and never give. Again, there is a lot of people that come and take. We call these energy vampires in the personal development world. And we need to be conscious and mindful of energy vampires, those people that just want to come and take our energy, get as much as they can from us, but they give very little back. So it's very important that we set these boundaries. We're aware of those energy vampires, and we are looking at these 4 points in here with Jane's point to protect our space as well. So it's very important for us to set boundaries because it will uplift us, it will give us more time, it will give us more energy, and it allows us to start to build that self-respect and live time and energy and life on our conditions. And that leads me to this thought here. So if you give people an inch, they will take a mile, and we are all limited in the distance that we can give. So for example, if you're at work, you're in an office or wherever you work, and you start to stay a little bit late off your own time, so you're not getting paid for it. But if you stay half an hour late, 45 minutes late, an hour late one night, your boss is going to start to expect it in other nights. If you've given him permission once, you can see that he will come back or she will come back, and they will expect that from you. So if you start to give people an inch, they'll take a mile. So when you do get into that situation where you don't mind staying one night, we need to be clear. And we're going to talk about how we set clear boundaries. We need to be clear that it's a one-off. It's a one-off situation. I can do it this night, but this isn't going to become the regular. And that's setting the boundary up front before anybody can take a mile past that inch. So I just want to leave you with that thought as we go into the next point today. So if you've got any thoughts, any questions, any boundaries that you've had to reset yourself, please share them in the comments box. I would love to bring them into this session. So that gets us onto the question, why do we struggle? Why do we struggle to set boundaries? Why do we give people so much of our time and our energy? Why do we find ourselves drained? Why do we let people take advantage of us? And the first one is that we aren't clear enough with our boundaries. We haven't taken the time to set our boundaries, or we're telling people, and we're going to go through some examples in a second, we are thinking that we're telling people our boundaries, but what we're saying and what we actually mean aren't the same thing. And we're going to look at how we do that as humans in just a second. The second one is we can tend to ask for permission to set boundaries. So instead of saying, this is my boundary, you ask people, please, can you not do this? Or please, can you not do that? You ask the question, you ask for permission to set your own boundaries. That helps us struggle. That makes us struggle. It doesn't help us set clear boundaries. And the third is we haven't set boundaries for ourselves. And we just talked about energy vampires there, but sometimes we can be our biggest energy vampire. We can be our biggest problem. And if we don't have boundaries for ourselves and self-discipline for ourselves, then how can we expect other people to respect our boundaries as well? So we need to, one, set our boundaries for us to be able to set them for other people. And we need to respect our own boundaries for other people to respect them as well. So Della's saying here, boundaries with my family to understand that I might not seem occupied, but this is my schedule and they must work around it. That's beautiful. And sometimes, we have to set boundaries around it. I'm doing this. This is my time. You need to understand that. You need to respect that. And there's no harm in us having that conversation. We're going to talk more about this in a second, Del, but it's really wonderful that you set those boundaries with your family. And we can set boundaries with our family, with our partners, with our friends. We could set boundaries with people that connect with us on social media, our work colleagues, our boss, anyone that we interact with. We need to start to set those boundaries. So let's take a look at a couple of examples. So I'm going to ask you the question here. What is the problem with this? So this is an attempt of us or somebody here trying to set a boundary. So someone just keep calling them at late hours in the 1 a.m. in the morning, 2 a.m. in the morning, 3 a.m., and to set that boundary, your response is, you can't keep calling me at this time. What's the problem with that statement in terms of setting a boundary? So Jane's going, how do we convey the boundaries to other people without sounding rude? Now, that's what we're going to cover. So brilliant question. We're going to go on to that in a second. Because is it rude to set boundaries? We'll cover that in a second. Don't worry, Jane. I'll come back to that question. So what's wrong with this? So you have somebody that's calling you at 1 a.m., 2 a.m., or they're messaging you too much, and you've told them, you can't keep calling me at this time. What is wrong with that statement in terms of setting a boundary? So whilst you're thinking about that, I'm going to tell you as well. So the thing is, they can. Just because you say they can't, they can keep calling you at this time, and they're doing it. You're not clear in what you're explaining. You're just saying you can't keep calling me there. You're not clear on the boundary that you're setting, you're just making a statement. And the truth is, they can call you at that time, and that's what they're doing. So you're not being clear on the boundary that you're setting, and you're not taking control of the situation neither. We're going to look at the 3 C's of setting a boundary in just a second. So that's the problem with that one, is we always tell people you can't do this, you can't, but they can and they are. And that leaves a problem in us setting a boundary. The second one there, I can't keep staying late at work. Same thing again. You're saying, I can't keep staying late at work, but you can and you are. And you keep turning up, and making that statement is not going to set boundaries. It's not going to reset boundaries. It's not going to change anything. You're going to find yourself straight back in. Maybe your boss might consider the question, consider the statement, but then you'll find yourself back into that boundary again that you set in the first place, or that boundary broken, and again, you're late at work. So again, it's not clear. You're not taking control of the situation, and you're not explaining what will happen if those boundaries are broken. And finally, the last one, please, can you stop talking to me about that? So in the last scenario, somebody's having a conversation with you. They're asking you to open up. They're trying to get you to talk about a certain topic. And you just say, please, can you stop talking about that? It's an attempt for us to set a boundary, but is it clear? What's wrong with that one? So Adele is saying here that they will ignore you because they don't understand, because you are not clear with your reasons. 100%. There's no clarity there. There's no clarity in the boundary. We're just making a statement. And then the third one, what makes it different from the other two, is we're asking for permission. We aren't taking control. We don't have that self-respect. We're not setting that boundary. We're asking them, can you please stop talking about that? We're asking for permission to set our own boundary. When we ask for permission to set that boundary, we're not always going to be granted it. Some people will maybe accept it or not, but those who don't, they will continue. And this is kind of going back onto Jane's question. Is it rude for us to set boundaries, or is the people that are actually overstepping our boundaries the people that are rude? It's a question we've got to ask ourselves. And Adele says you keep allowing it. Again, exactly on the second one there, and I can't keep staying late at work. You just keep allowing it to happen. You're not clear. So that leads us nicely on what we're going to cover today. And a lot of this, we're going to go into a lot more depth and detail in the Putting Into Practice workshop, but it's the 3 C's for boundary setting. If we want to reset boundaries, if we want to set things in place, one, we need to take control of the situation. So we need to take control of the situation. We need to say, right, I'm not living by this other person's boundaries. I'm setting my own boundaries because I'm giving too much time, too much energy. It's affecting my well-being. It's affecting my positivity. It's affecting other areas of my life. I need to take control of the situation. That's the first C in boundary setting. The second is we need to make clarity. Whatever statement we're making, we can't just make a wishful statement saying, you can't do this, I can't do that, please don't do this. There's no clarity on that. It's just a statement. And the statement, as I mentioned earlier on, if you say you can't, they can because they're doing that. You're allowing them to do that. If you say I can't, you can because you're doing that. And if you're saying, please, can you, you're asking permission to set that boundary. So you need to step away, take control, stop asking for permission, and be clear on that boundary, what it is. And then finally, the third C is, what is the consequence if that boundary is overstepped? So what's going to happen? So I'm setting this boundary, and if you overstep that, this is what's going to happen. This is how we clearly set boundaries so it's understood. Because a lot of the time we try and set boundaries, but we don't follow up, we aren't clear enough that the other person understands what that boundary looks like. We need to be able to draw that boundary. We need to be able to understand that boundary. We need to be able to illustrate that boundary to the people that we're setting it with. And before I move on to some examples on how we can turn those first 3 examples into something that is a bit more clear, in control, and shows the consequences, I'm going to come back to the comments and just see anything that's here. There's nothing coming through. So let me know, how have you set boundaries in the past? Have you ever found yourself asking for permission to set boundaries? Have you ever found yourself kind of just telling people that they can't do this, or telling yourself that I can't do that to reset that boundary? Let me know in the comments box. So we go back to those 3 examples. So I'm just going to show the examples again. So you can't keep calling me at this time. I can't keep staying late at work. Please, can you stop talking about that? We're not clear. We're not taking control of the situation, and there's no consequences if that boundary was to be breached or broken. So let's take a look at 3 examples that are a little bit better. So the first one is, if you keep calling me at this time, we're acknowledging that they can do this and they continue to do this, then I will block you. Nice and simple. If you've got someone on Facebook, first one's nice and easy. If you've got someone on Facebook who's continuously ringing you at the wrong times, that are being a bit inappropriate, you can block them. You have the power to take control of that situation, and you can block them. And going back to Jane's question, is this a bit rude? Is it a bit rude to block them? Or are they the ones that are being rude by trying to call you at 1 a.m., 2 a.m., and maybe you've asked politely for them not to, but they're still pushing that boundary? We need to draw that boundary, draft it, and say, look, if you keep calling me at this time, then I'm going to block you. The second one, we need to take control of the situation again and say, I will no longer be staying late after work. It is not in my contract. You're stipulating what's happening there. You're being clear that, I don't want to stay at work. It's affecting my family. You can go on a little bit and elaborate on this of why it's affecting you, but it's not on your contract. And if this is a problem, then we need to look at an alternative solution. So what else, how can we still get this work done without me staying late an extra hour, an extra 2 hours, or what is it we're going to do to solve this situation? But I'm no longer staying late after work. You're resetting that boundary. The third one, I do not want to discuss this with you. It is personal. If you don't stop asking me, then I'm going to hang up the call. So assuming that you're having this conversation on the call, or maybe it's in face-to-face, you just say, I'm going to end the conversation, I'm going to change the topic. You have to be clear on that boundary. You have to take back control of the situation, and you need to stipulate the consequence so that they know if they step that boundary again, something is going to happen. Because if you don't make that consequence clear, or what is going to happen if they do step that boundary, they're just going to keep doing it again and again and again. Now I'm going to put the question out to you. Do these examples sound rude? So going back to Jane's question, do these examples sound rude? What's your thoughts? So if you keep calling me at this time, I'm going to block you. Is that rude? Let me know, because it leads us nicely on to our final thoughts and our final points today before we go into our workshop, which is in 8 minutes time. We're going to look at drafting boundaries, how we word our boundaries, how we change the language. I'm going to share in a second what we're going to be covering in the workshop. There's 3 points that I want you to note when you are setting these boundaries, and if you think it's rude to approach it that way. One is that people will not like you resetting boundaries, or people will not like you being told when they've overstepped the boundary that you've made clear, but do it anyway. If you don't take control of the situation and follow up with consequences, your boundary will be broken again. So if you don't take control of the situation, you're not clear, it's just going to repeat. It's going to happen again and again and again, and that person's going to take advantage, and it's going to again and again and again. You need to set that boundary. You need to make it clear. You need to follow up with a consequence if they do that. So for example, the easy example, someone calling you at 1 a.m., they do it again, block them. Lesson learned. Is it rude to block them? No, because you've made it clear to them that that's your boundary. They overstep that boundary, they've got to face a consequence. And the third is setting boundaries is not negative. So the question Jane asks is it rude? And again, we have to come across in a way, we have to give people opportunity. We have to, maybe first of all, you just tell them, you've overstepped the boundary there, and we try the polite way, but at times we just have to be blunt and honest with them in a way that this is what you're doing. I don't like it. If you continue, this is going to happen. And we need to follow up that consequence, because setting boundaries is not negative. It's one of the biggest signs of self-respect. If you've got self-respect, got respect for yourself, you respect your time, you respect your energy, and other people will respect you too. So it's not, and I've learned this the hard way. I've had to do a lot of resetting of healthy boundaries over the past year, and it's not an easy thing to do, but it's an important thing to do. If you want to keep your energy up, you want to keep your well-being up, you want to keep your positivity up, then you need to be able to set these boundaries. So come back to the posts here. Coach is saying they are straightforward. Yep, it's just clear, concise, and you've accepted the consequence. You don't have to be rude to them. Being rude would say, you're really pissing me off or something like that. Can you just do one or something? That's rude. Just telling people to F off or whatever, that's rude. But being straight and honest and clear on what you don't like, and if they do it again, this is going to happen, that's just setting boundaries, and it's a sign of self-respect. So be honest and clear, because if you're not honest and clear, things are just going to happen again. If you just tell people you can't do this, they're going to continue because they can, because they've been doing it, and it's going to continue. If you ask for permission, it's not always going to be granted. Some people might, some people out there, if you say, please, can you not talk about this? People who are respectful will say, yep, I'm sorry, blah, blah, and they'll step back and they understand the boundary. But not a lot of people will be like that. So you need to be ready to be straightforward and clear and honest, as Adele has put there. And that leads us nicely onto what we're going to be covering in today's workshop. So we're going to look at where boundaries need to be set in our lives. We're going to do some reflective thoughts on where in my life, on who in my life do I need to set boundaries with. We're going to be looking at our heroes and villains. So who are our heroes in our life right now? Who do we need to spend more time with this year? Who do we need to start to spend less time with this year? We're going to be doing a boundary exercise on how to draft the boundaries. And then we're going to be looking at the language we use with the boundaries we need to set with people in our lives and put all of this into practice. So that is setting healthy boundaries. Next week, we're going to be looking at bridging the communication gap. So we're going to be talking all about the gap in communication when we converse with other people and what we can do and put in place to bridge that and improve our communication with other people, because we are now on module 2, which is all about building relationships, healthy relationships, and that comes from boundary setting, making sure we have healthy boundaries in place, looking at how we can improve our communication with other people, and we're going to go on to some other lessons from there as well. And if you want to join the workshop, it's hub.coachingminds.co.uk. You can find my coaching room in there. You can become a revolutionary. You can get access to a lot more content, a lot more stuff inside here, and it gives you access to all of our workshops and all the replays, the notes, the presentation slides, absolutely everything you can get access to in there. And now we've got 4 minutes, so I'm going to open this up to any questions. So Jane, I hope I went back and answered your question, because it is, and that's a place that I've been, is am I rude for setting boundaries? I'm going to bring that question up again because I think it was a really good question, but we can fall into that trap. You know, am I being rude because I'm setting this boundary? But we've got to think that some people make us feel that way. Some people will manipulate us to thinking that we're the ones being rude by setting that boundary, and because we've given them permission to overstep it before. But we constantly, so Jen here, because to go back to that question, and anyone who has any thoughts on this and would like to share this, I'd like to bring the wisdom from you guys into here as well, is she said, how do we convey the boundaries to other people without sounding rude? How would you do that? If you've set boundaries before, how have you approached this? Have you approached it a little bit differently from what I presented to you today? Adele says, sometimes we want to be too accommodating. Sometimes we want to be too accommodating. Sometimes we want to be too much of a people pleaser. And we think that we're actually going to affect people's feelings and all that by setting boundaries. But yeah, we've definitely been there. Too accommodating. We want to do too much for other people. We don't want to hurt anyone else's feelings by setting boundaries. But it's the way in which we put those boundaries across. As long as they're clear, then there shouldn't be a problem. Because going back to the thought of today, if you give people an inch, they will take a mile. And there's only so much distance that we can go each day. And think of it this way, the more energy you're spending on people who, and I say this in the nicest way as possible, but don't matter so much in your life, the less energy and the less time you're giving to those that you love and that mean a lot more to you in life. There's only so many people we can give our time and energy to each day. So we need to be mindful. We need to set those boundaries and make sure we're not wasting time trying to please people who are just there to take as much as they can from us, when we could be giving that time and energy to those who, you know, really uplift us, and we can uplift them as well. So I just want to say we've got our workshop in 1 minute, so I'm going to jump off. But thank you so much, everybody who's tuned in. Thank you, Jane and Adele, for your interaction today. Thank you for a brilliant question, Jane. Thank you, Adele, for sharing all your wins and achievements. It's absolutely fantastic. And I look forward to connecting you all next week. We start to look at how we can bridge that communication gap and improve our communication with other people around us. Have a wonderful rest of your week, guys, and I'll see those of you who are joining us in the workshop in just a minute's time. See you there.